up, swashbucklers? You're listening to Under the Crossbones. My name is Phil Johnson. I'm your host for the show. This is episode number 40. You can get all the show notes at underthecrossbones.com/040. Yeah, episode 40. Does it make the show middle-aged? No, I don't think so, because there's going to be far more shows than this one. So we are not even begun. Anyway, fun fact about the number 40. There are 40 time zones in the world. 40 of them. That's craziness. I've been to 4 of them, I think. So I got a lot more traveling to do. Whichever time zone you are listening from, though, welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here. My guest today on the show is Nick Hoffman. And Nick's a guy that I know actually from comedy, from the comedy world, because he's a comedian. But he noticed that I was doing this show, and he was like, hey, I'm a pirate guy, too. And so we're going to talk about Nick's pirate wedding and the pirate installation that he did for the Petaluma History Museum. All sorts of good stuff. This is a really fun talk, and you are absolutely going to dig it. So before we get into that, I got to throw out a shout-out to Mr. Craig Buddy of the History of Pirates podcast, and welcome all the many new listeners that are in the show this week. So thanks for stopping by. I'm glad you're digging it. Glad you're liking it. The download numbers went through the roof over the weekend, so that's fantastic. If you are new to the show and you're looking for all the places to catch all the goodness, underthecrossbones.com is the home page for the website. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/underthecrossbones. If you want to catch us on Twitter, it's twitter.com/undercrossbones. There's no the, because there wasn't enough characters, because if Twitter's known for anything, it's not enough characters. And make sure that you subscribe to the show in your favorite podcatcher through your iTunes. We're on Slacker. We're on, it's everywhere. Google Play, anywhere where you find podcasts, we're there, except for Spotify. I don't think they have us on there yet, because they're all picky. So yes, I also want to tell you a little bit about some of the upcoming guests to keep you involved in the show, to keep you, in case you don't like Nick, really is what it's about. In case you go, oh, that Nick guy, not so good. Anyway, here's some of the upcoming guests that I have on the show. Coming up, Mark Hanna, who's the author of the book called Pirate Nests and the Rise of the British Empire. Really cool talk we had. We're going to hear from Captain Teach, who is the head of the Phoenix Risen Pirate Clan. We're going to talk to Peter T. Leeson, who is an economist, and he's the author of the book called The Invisible Hook, which is a fascinating book about the economics during the golden age of piracy. It's really great. We're also going to talk to Shayna Vest, who is the proprietor of DressLikeAPirate.com, and how she got in super early on the internet and e-commerce, and she sells pirate clothing and things like that. Lots of fun. And we'll also hear from Michael Elledge, who is a builder of cannons. He builds cannons, and he builds the things that the cannons go on. Really great. So lots of killer guests coming up that you're totally going to dig. And make sure you go through the backlog, too, and you can hear you can hear Craig Buddy. You can hear my interview with Craig Buddy, where he talks about him instead of dead people. So it's lots of fun. Go through the backlogs. There's lots of great interviews there. So if you caught the last episode, I hopefully you caught it on the second version of it. Because that first version, I tweaked the editing. It was all weird and wrong because I did something wrong. But it's been fixed. So episode number 39, if you got a weird, glitchy version of it, go re-download it again. And it's perfectly, it's in good shape now. So my apologies for that. That's the first time it's ever happened. I managed to get 39 episodes in without making a serious editing mistake. But anyway, it's all fixed now. So go get an episode number 39 if you got the messed up version. How was your Mother's Day? Was your Mother's Day good? I went and visited my mom, had dinner. We did what my mom and I do best, which is let my dad cook. And it was good. We had beefsteak. If you're an East Coast USA person, you know what beefsteak is. If you're anywhere else, you probably don't. But it's awesome. It's fantastic. It's tri-tip, sliced, nice and thin, on white bread, dipped in butter. That's all it is. Super simple and awesome. I also did a bunch of gigs over the weekend. Thursday night, I did the Blue Lagoon in Santa Cruz, California, which is it's a dive bar. Long ago, it was a gay bar, and now it's a rock club. And Thursday nights, they've been doing comedy there for the last 9 years, and I think I've been going probably the last 9 years. I started going there pretty early, and it was a suitably mediocre show. It was exactly what the 9th anniversary of the Blue Lagoon comedy show should be. It was a mildly interested audience watching comedy that was far better than they were giving it. So, but it was a fun show anyway. And then did a little gig in Oakland that was cool. Played at a gaming store on Saturday night, which was packed. And that was a super fun show. And I got to use some of the gaming jokes that I didn't get to use at the private party the weekend before. If you heard the episode 39, you heard me talk about that private party. So I got to use those jokes, and they killed. They did great, so I feel better about them now. Upcoming tour dates, lots of them. May the 13th, that's this Friday, I will be headlining at the Redwood Cafe in Cotati, California. May the 17th, which is a Tuesday, I will be at the Layover in Oakland, California. May 19th, which is a Thursday, I think, I will be headlining at the Gold Country Casino in Oroville, California. May 25th, I will be headlining Ralston's Goat, Modesto, California. May 27th and 28th, I will be at the Comedy Palace in San Diego, California, which will be fun. I've got dates in Los Angeles coming up, Oregon, Nevada, Arizona, Washington, Florida, Indiana, Colorado. All that stuff is coming up. If you want to get all the tour dates, go to underthecrossbones.com and click on the tour dates button. And if you want me to come to your town, let's do a house concert, because I do those too. If you are digging the show, if you're new to the show, if you're liking the show, if you've been with me since episode 1, whoever you are, if you want to help support the show, that is awesome. Go to underthecrossbones.com/support, and there are a variety of ways that you can do that. You can either just drop a little donation in the PayPal box, real easy, simple, whatever you think it's worth. There's an Amazon banner there. If you click that little Amazon banner and buy yourself something nice, I get a little kickback on it, and it supports the show. And it doesn't cost you a dime. You can also be a sponsor of the show if you would like. It's very cheap. It's very easy. All that information is right there on underthecrossbones.com/support. All right, I am going to cut my part a little bit short today because I've got a long and very entertaining interview with my pal, Nick Hoffman. So here we go. Let's hear it. You're an interesting guest because we know each other from non-piratey things. And
right, exactly. Well, although being a comic is somewhat piratey.
It's very piratey, in fact, yes. The only thing we are short of is the cool clothes, I think.
But we get the rum.
But we get the rum, right. So give me a little bit of your background in the pirate culture.
So I suppose the main beginning is when I got engaged to my wife, she had, a little backstory. So when you're courting a woman and you're trying to suggest that you are somehow serious, whether you are or whether you're just trying to imply that. One way is to talk about a possible wedding.
Yes.
And so what had come up between the two of us was because we had both been married previously. Uh-huh. In my set, I refer to my first wife as the practice wife. Because it's bad to make this wife come in second and call her the second wife.
Right. Good call.
Yeah, no, it's although really realistically she got the better end of the deal. But anyway, so I had said to her, I said, "Hey, when you get married again, what would be the most romantic sort of cool wedding you could imagine?" And she thought about it for a second and she said, "I'd love to be married on a Spanish galleon."
Okay.
And we were living long distance from each other, so I had a lot of time driving home to think about that. And I thought, wow, a Spanish galleon. Because like many of the guests you've had and yourself, I probably learned my love for pirates on Pirates of the Caribbean: The Ride.
Sure.
Some of my earliest memories are buying the little wood cap gun flintlock at Pieces of 8.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the ones that look like guns.
Yep.
and I think I had because when I was so I don't know if we're close to the same age, but so I was born in 1968.
Yeah, we're close. 73 for me.
If someone listening to this is booking comics and that sounds too old, I was born in 70 something. But anyway. So that means that one of the times I was at Disneyland, because I grew up in Southern California, was during the bicentennial.
Yes.
And so there were tricorn hats everywhere, and Pieces of 8 had even more flintlocks and rifles and muskets. And there was something about that aesthetic that I just loved. And the only example I had outside of the bicentennial festivities was tricorn hats that I saw in pirates.
Sure.
So I've always associated that look with pirates. And it's a look I've always liked. So, okay, flash forward now. I'm driving home after my possible future wife has said, like to be married on a Spanish galleon. I'm like, wow, that's a pirate wedding right there. And so I had, here's how I know that not only was I playing an angle, but so was she. I had written her a poem on our next visit, and I had found a little ceramic gifty box that was in the shape of a Spanish galleon.
Okay.
And I had put the poem in the gifty box, and I handed it to her. And this should have been, I should have known. She said, "What's that?"
Yeah, she's not expecting a piece of paper.
I didn't think much of it. I thought, oh, well, it's a Spanish galleon, you doof. That's what you said. See how romantic. Anyway, so when I eventually did propose for real, and we were talking about the wedding, I had sort of had it in my mind, we're having a pirate wedding.
Right.
Doubt I can find a galleon, but I think I can make everything else happen. And she was game for a number of reasons. She didn't want to wear a white dress. She wanted to wear a red one.
Okay.
She liked the festivity. She liked the carousing that could surround that. Like people always talk about getting married as settling down. I can tell you, as a married man with 2 kids, it is the biggest adventure you're going to have. There's no settling down. You're on 24/7. It's life-threatening.
There's cannon fire.
You don't even get to use the bathroom by yourself. That's how involved it is. So anyway, so we started planning, and our engagement lasted about a year and a half. And during that time, we frequented thrift stores and picked up silver and silver plate, various props. I think that was right after we got engaged, or right around the same time, was the first time we went to the NorCal Pirate Festival.
Okay.
Which I believe was the first time they had it.
Oh, okay.
And also, I ended up hooking into, because I was trying to find information and trying to find costume tips and trying to find all these things. I tracked down Tales of the Seven Seas, which was a reenactment, still is a reenactment group based in this area. And they had a website, maybe even still do have a website, although they've become less active, but it had costuming ideas, and they had an encampment at the Pirate Festival. And so we met a lot of those people. And basically our goal was this with the wedding. We didn't want to have a pirate-themed wedding.
Okay.
We wanted to have a wedding pirates would have if they were getting married.
Got it. Okay.
For a couple of reasons. One, my wife has an advanced degree in psychology, because I apparently am not afraid of that. And I have my MFA's in film. My bachelor's is in social science. I wanted something rooted. I didn't want something just, a theme party is something kids have.
Sure.
I didn't want to have a kids themed wedding. I wanted people to take it seriously. So we tried as much as possible to have meaning in our choices. And I'll give you a few examples of that. And I talk about this in one of my media classes at the college. A lot of things that go with weddings, people have no idea where those things came from.
Certainly, yeah.
For example, when we say the best man, it's a weird nomenclature, I mean, in other words, if he's the best man, why isn't she marrying him?
Right.
So where that comes from is that it used to be a time when men would go and steal a bride from a warring village, and they would bring with them their best man.
Right.
So they don't get their ass kicked.
Yes.
And so that's the best man. So I thought, well, that fits pirate stuff.
Right. If I remember right, part of that best man, original tradition was that the best man was also supposed to deflower the bride.
I did not know that. I'm glad I'm maybe glad I didn't know that.
You don't want to go that traditional?
That's I don't even think I would have ran that by the missus. Because you're never sure. You're never sure if they're gonna take you up on that.
Well, there's really no good answer to it. So yeah.
Right, exactly. Boy, that reminds me of a side story. You can either keep this or edit this out, but with the practice wife. So I was at Florida State going to film school. We were living bi-coastal, maybe part of the beginning of the end. She had come for a visit, and while we were having relations, she posed this question to me. So it's a moment. I think we were in the after moment, and she had said, sort of almost like a mused type question. She said, "Would you like it if there was another person in here?" Now, I had started doing comedy before that moment, so my mind went to a couple of places. My first answer was the comedian answer, which was, "Do you mean in addition to or instead of you?"
Right.
But I know that's not the right answer, because I'm a heavy sleeper and she would stab me in the neck. So I answered the only acceptable answer a man can answer in that circumstance, because here's the quandary you're in. If it's a serious question and there's a possibility of you getting another a guest star in that situation, you don't. If she's serious, I don't want to shut that down. But at the same time, if it was one of those test questions, and if you answer it wrong, you're in huge trouble, I didn't want to answer that wrong. Sure,
of course.
So I answered the only way a sane man could answer. I said, "I don't know."
Right.
Because that's the only right answer right there.
That is the only right answer. The only one that
if she brings somebody in, I'm not saying no, but even that could have been a test. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. You never know. You never know.
So back on task here.
Wedding symbolism.
So the best man thing. Then the other thing is, the reason that the bride family and the groom's family are on separate thing goes also to that warring village thing.
Sure.
If you want to keep the wedding going, you don't mix them all up. We're going to join them by marriage, but that doesn't mean they have to be friends.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
The other thing is, the reason the bride or the bridesmaids are on the arm that they're on is so that your sword hand is free.
Oh, no kidding. That I didn't know.
Yeah. So all of these things, by the way, the reason the groomsmen and the bridesmaids dress like sort of imitation bride and grooms, is so that the evil spirits might follow them home instead of the newly betrothed.
Oh, well, that's always what you want to do to your best friends is,
they're in other words, when the evil spirit gets there and says, "Oh, I've been duped," it's going to go somewhere else.
Or it may settle.
The plan.
It may settle. You never know. Some of those spirits are willing to settle.
Exactly. But see, all of these things, though, allowed me to say, well, all of these things go great with guys dressed with cutlasses and flintlocks.
Sure, yeah.
So it allowed me to sort of have the meaning in the wedding. And what I mention this to my students, I say, because here's the deal. If you have things in your wedding that you don't actually know the meaning of, then by definition, they are meaningless.
Right.
And it was, here's the thing about having a pirate wedding. I was very involved. Try asking a guy to pick out mauve napkins for the reception, and you're not going to get a lot of involvement. But you ask the guy, "Hey, what kind of sword should we get the groomsmen?" And he's like, "Hell yeah, I'm interested."
So she said, "I want to get married on a Spanish galleon," and you immediately went to pirates. When you said, "Okay, that means pirates," did she say, "No, that's not quite what I had in mind," or was she just like totally on board with it?
Well, again, I think the Spanish galleon was a ruse. I don't think she meant that.
Okay.
But when we started to get into the planning, and she realized what kind of fun we could have with this type of wedding,
Uh-huh.
It also sidesteps some of the more ridiculous but expensive things that you can have
Of course.
in a regular wedding, although it does up the ante in other areas. So, like, for example, the average dude getting married rents a tuxedo probably for, I don't know, 125, 150 bucks, whatever.
Uh-huh.
Maybe buys some shoes, and that's it. That's his deal.
Sure.
My hat was $125. My shoes were $400.
Oh my gosh.
Because I went and got some boots at Cow Boots, and they were great. So, my outfit, I felt like, well, here's the deal. If you ask most people whose day is the wedding, they go, oh, it's the bride's day.
Sure.
Well, if that's the answer, don't expect the groom to remember the anniversary. It wasn't his day.
Right.
He was just supposed to show up, and when he did, kudos to him.
Sure.
You know? So this meant that we were both fully engaged, and we wanted our guests fully engaged. So we had like 90 guests, 89 of them were dressed up.
Uh-huh.
We had sent out, so we had to do some information stuff. So we were trying to encourage, because if you look at pirate outfits, there's quite a spectrum.
Sure.
And it goes from yo ho ho to just ho.
Right.
And so we sent out a note basically saying we're looking for yo ho ho, not ho.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so we encouraged, if you don't want to go full pirate, be a peasant. We try to encourage. We sent out pictures of the period we had a website that people could go to.
Uh-huh. Who was the one person that didn't dress up?
A guy that I used to work with. And he was all gung ho about it. And then the day of, he shows up in like jeans and a t-shirt. It's like, really?
He was a music pirate, is what he was.
Apparently.
Yeah,
Exactly. He was digital download. It was all about digital download. The other thing that's tricky about a pirate wedding is when you start looking for locations, the normal conversation, they're picturing tuxedos and taffeta.
Sure.
And you're picturing debauchery.
Uh-huh.
And so when you finally get to the point where you say, well, we're having a pirate wedding, there were many wedding planner people that are at those event places that would go, ooh, I'm not sure we can do that.
Right. Uh-huh.
So the good news was it made us also think outside the box in terms of locations and in terms of because I wasn't looking for something that looked like Paris.
Sure.
I was looking for something more nautical. We ended up, so there's a farm sort of educational place called Slide Ranch.
Okay.
And it's right near Stinson Beach.
Oh, nice.
And it has, so we had passed it a number of times. We had looked at Stinson Beach as a location. Getting to rent part of the beach is tricky. So if you have people out there thinking of pirate weddings, beaches are hard to secure because they don't want, especially if it's a summer wedding, they don't want to shut any part of it down.
Sure.
So that may mean that if you're having a pirate wedding and 5 people in flip-flops with a beach ball come up, that's in your wedding.
Right.
So we were looking for a location that sort of overlooked the ocean.
Uh-huh.
And we had seen this spot, and we pulled up and we walked down to the main buildings, and the woman comes out, and we told her kind of what we were after, and she goes, well, we only do 2 weddings a year. We're like, oh, okay. And she goes, but nobody's booked it this year. We're like, oh. And she said, let me show you our location. So she showed us a couple, and they were cool. They had beautiful, you could see the rocky Sonoma coast, and I mean, it was really lovely.
Uh-huh.
And she goes, let me show you the better one. It's a bit of a walk, but let me show you. And this place was on a huge bluff, flat area overlooking the ocean. I mean, we couldn't have created a spot better. And because it's a place that isn't used to, they don't rent it, like that's not their purpose.
Right.
Now we'd been dealing with all these other places, and they were looking for thousands of dollars in advance, and you need to hold it, and you need this much, and I mean it was just and insurance and all these things. And she goes, we gave her our date. Now we had, for whatever reason, the date that worked for us happened to be a date that every young couple that year was trying to get, which was 7/7/7.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So everybody's trying to get that. It just happened to be the weekend that worked for us.
Uh-huh.
So I mentioned that date to her, and she goes, "Well, I'll check it." And so we're like driving away, going, "Oh, I hope we get this." And I wonder how much it's going to be because she had to check with her board of directors.
Uh-huh.
So I call her back on Monday, and I said, "So what'd you find out?" And it was like, I want to say it was like $300.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
And she'd already penciled us in.
Wow. That's the way to go, man.
No kidding. And then we ended up using there's a hall in Stinson Beach, a community center, and on the eaves, the top part of the ceiling there is nautical paintings. It's got seagulls and rocks and ocean, and it's big wood beamed and wood floors. I mean, it feels like where you would get married if you were a pirate.
Nice.
And the woman was excited. She was excited that we were having that kind of a wedding, and excited that it was the guy she was mostly dealing with, which never happens. And, from there it became a fair amount of production design.
Sure.
I'd seen a lot of Renaissance girls and pirate guys, and I didn't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And I'd seen I'd seen situations where like none of the guests were dressed, and yet the wedding party was, and I'm like, well, that's not the movie I want to be in. So, we really tried to be as inclusive as possible. Our wedding invitation was a huge pirate map.
Nice.
Sent with a seal on it, and it felt very, we tried to immerse as much as possible so that when people got there, they were already there in spirit. And it really worked great that there was a hike to the location. I mean, except for my mom, who has a tough time, but for everybody else, because it took them away from their cars and took them away from everything. And then they arrived where it was just a bunch of pirates.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good transition.
Yeah. And me and the guys came up over a hill like we had just come off the ship. I had made to put the ring in, I had made a treasure chest. I had gotten a chest at Michael's and then augmented it. And there was the ring pillow was, you open the thing and inside there it was, but under the pillow, not that the guests didn't know this, but my guys did, before we took the hill, there underneath that was shot glasses and a rum bottle. So that's carried on to the location, it's just perfect. A lot of things came together. That's the first place. I know you had the McKays on your show.
Sure, yeah.
We got hats from the McKays and became chummy with them at that time. And
oh, nice.
Through the Tales of the Seven Seas, we had met a guy named Greg Medley, who was one of their peeps and was a guy who had performed a pirate wedding before.
Oh, okay.
So he was totally into doing it. He's the sweetest person in the world. Well, it turns out that day that we were having the ceremony, he said, well, my brother and a bunch of the other folks could come and they could be ushers.
Okay.
So, these are people that are like full-time pirate, like they're hardcore pirates. So
I see. Okay.
we had the real deal basically walking people in.
Nice.
In fact, one of the group then was, and I don't think you've had him on the show, Jack Spareribs.
No, I know of him, but I haven't had him on yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's pirate magician, and he does puppets and stuff. He does, now it's his full-time gig. He's really sharpened his act. It's really great. He for a long time, he was one of the regulars at the pier at Pier 39.
Yeah.
And anyway, so here's a guy that looks, to every guest, they're looking, going, oh my God, it's the actual Jack Sparrow. But more interesting because he can do sleight of hand and stuff. So
right, yeah. Johnny Depp's a terrible magician.
These were the elements for the reception, for our song that we danced to. In film school, when we made our thesis film, we had reached out to some professional composers. The guy that ended up doing the music for our thesis film was a gentleman by the name of Richard Bellis. And Richard Bellis had been a child actor for Disney. And then became a music composer, and he had won an Emmy for composing the music for It. Okay. Stephen King's thing.
Yeah.
But also, when you ride on the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland, that's John Williams' music, but it's rearranged and recomposed for the ride by Richard Bellis.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
and Bellis had done a number of Disney's things, either adapting music or writing music straight for it. Like I think, did you ever see the Circle Theater when they had the Adventure in China?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think he composed the music for that.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
But anyway, so I had sent him a note saying, "Hey, Richard, what would be a cool waltz for us to use that would be period appropriate and etc." And he wrote back, he goes, "Hell, I'm a Disney guy. Why don't I just adapt the pirate song to a waltz?" So the only downside was he made it a Viennese waltz.
Okay.
Which apparently is much faster.
Yes.
than a regular waltz. So when we brought the music to a choreographer to do our waltz, she goes, "Oh, this is a Viennese waltz." And we're like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Well, it's much faster."
Yep.
Neither my bride nor I are super skinny people. So that sounded hard, but we managed.
That's good.
So we had an actual Disney qualified guy putting our music together. We had a pirate reenactor for our justice of the peace, if you will. And that was really because I would say, look, I've always liked pirates, but I wasn't really an avid pirate sort of follower. I love the movies,
sure,
especially the first one.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I'd certainly seen other pirate movies. For a long time, I have a list of Hollywood people I'd like to punch in the face. Now, I never probably will punch them in the face.
Right.
But one of the people who made that list was Rennie Harlan for Cutthroat Island.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Not because, I mean, as pirate movies go, I could take it.
Yeah.
But he literally, for a while, it seemed that nobody would ever make a pirate movie again.
Yeah, yeah.
Because of him.
Yeah, and it was funny when I talked to Jason Sorrell, who was involved in the first movie, and he said that was definitely a topic of discussion in the writing room. Was let's not do Cutthroat Island.
Yeah, I'm sure. It just and I even loved that it was a female lead, and it's just what a mess.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, so before the wedding, I probably had one. I had Under the Black Flag in terms of a pirate book.
Sure, yeah.
And maybe one other. Now sitting next to me are probably 3 shelves of pirate books, many of which are hard history and some of which are just images so I could have inspiration.
Sure, yeah.
But, and we ended up, I think we may have missed one of NorCal Pirate Festival. I think we missed one. But I mean, from this experience, partly it became, for me, a metaphor that I hang my hat on at this point now.
Right, yeah.
There's so much about sort of standard life that feels rigged. And I know I listened to your interview with Bennerson. We'll talk about him when we talk about the museum. But, I know he, in terms of, they probably weren't as hardcore Marxist as we often give them credit for.
Yeah, exactly.
But that being said, the reality of how they got into the positions they were in was that they were brought on as privateers, many of them, by a government that didn't want to pay for an actual navy.
Right.
Had them do a job that they were unwilling to do themselves. So they had these guys put themselves in harm's way for the flag. And then when they signed a piece of paper that said everything's cool between us, they basically said to these guys, "Hey, don't do what you've only been doing for a livelihood for all your life now."
Right.
And that to me feels a lot like what many of us go through day to day.
Sure, absolutely.
That we're in a system where they need to have little people. And so the system has you can either become near the top and take advantage of people, or you can be the taken advantage of. And that feels crappy to me. So I always I like the metaphor, whether it's not, it's the metaphor that works. It doesn't have to be true.
Right, sure.
So...
Yeah, no, that's great.
But anyway,
man.
So that's how I ended up getting into the pirate thing, and it stayed with us when we had our first son, who has a pirate name, Morgan.
Nice.
By the way, our daughter has a pirate named Grace.
Oh, good. I'm glad it wasn't Blackbeard.
We don't necessarily, they don't, like, that's not the first thing we tell people. If they know we're pirates, they may catch on.
Yeah.
But they're great names anyway. Like, I would have been happy with those names anyway. But I get to look at my kids and go, ha ha. Yeah, it's way better than, like, Brandon.
Absolutely, yes.
By the way, if there's a Brandon listening, I'm not saying your name sucks. I'm saying it's not as badass as a pirate name.
There were no Brandon the Pirate.
I don't think so. Or Garrett, or any number of really great sounding yuppie names that aren't great sounding pirate names.
Captain Chad.
Captain Chad. That might be a pirate movie in the making. So anyway, when we had our first son, here's what was great. So we made friends with all these pirate people, and for example, when I'd reached out to the McKay saying, "Hey, what do you got in terms of baby hats in a pirate variety?" And they'd never done anything, but they said, "Well, this will be fun." So they made them like a little. It was a knit baby hat that had a pirate facade on the front.
Okay.
And they made a blanket with their same logo, but it was more, instead of Crossbones, it was Cross Rattles.
Nice.
And that was from them. That was a gift, and it was just lovely. But it was fun because that was one of the first hats we put on him when he came out of the hospital.
Nice, that's great.
Poor kid's been strapped with a life of villainy.
Yeah, well, that's right. When I was born, somebody gave me a football on a tee, and that to this day.
Well, that worked out.
Yeah, to this day, that football is still in the plastic wrapping. That's how well that went. Yeah. So tell me about the museum installation that you did.
So this was a bit of fun. So I'm in Petaluma, and for your listeners who are unfamiliar with Petaluma, it's Marin Light. For those who are unfamiliar with Marin, it's Beverly Hills of the North.
Right. Yeah.
So Petaluma is a quaint little village with a couple of main streets, and they have a city history museum. And if you've ever been to your own city's history museum, it likely is banal and boring as most of them are.
Yes.
And you've gone once, and when friends from out of town come, you don't bring them there.
Right.
Because who wants to see the farm background, unless you're a farmer, and nothing against that, but who wants to see that when you're out of town? You end up going to San Francisco and seeing something fun. So I had never been in the museum, and I was walking by it one day, and they had an Elvis exhibit.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, what the hell does Elvis have to do with Petaluma? Which is what got me in the door.
Right.
And the building is beautiful. It sort of reminds me of, the City Hall building in Back to the Future with the clock on it?
Sure, yeah.
It sort of looks like that. It was built, it's a Carnegie, I think so. One of the Carnegie Foundation buildings that was built as libraries for communities.
Okay.
Because those guys all felt bad, and so they made money ways to try to make themselves feel better. So it was intended to be the local library, but by then it had been outgrown, and became the Petaluma History Museum with enough library to keep the grant real. So I walk in, and the whole top floor had their local chicken, butter, and eggs exhibit.
Right.
But the whole bottom floor they had dedicated in this particular exhibit to Elvis. And it was mostly there was some CBS archival footage that had been found that was making the rounds.
Okay.
And with it came a collection of photos, so that was part of the exhibit. And then in the cases, they had solicited from locals their own Elvis memorabilia.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so it actually made for kind of a cool little exhibit. Didn't take that long, but you walk around, you look at these people had pins and shirts and bobbleheads and lunch boxes, and and you're kind of blown away by it. And then you're looking at the video and seeing Elvis in his early days, and you're looking at some of the images that have been found along with that archival footage, and And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. But what I was really struck by was when you go into that building, the whole center section, it's sort of got a big square central area that's all hardwood floors.
Uh-huh.
Each one of the corners of that square area has huge pillar posts, and then off to the side, sort of in plus, like anyway, and then it had little areas off of that main square, so that's how it broke into various parts of the exhibit.
Uh-huh.
Is that making sense?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So I'm looking around and I'm going hardwood floors, very cool lighting, old building. They really need a pirate exhibit. And so I decided, you know what? No one's going to do it if I don't do it. So I came home and I started to put together a pitch, film style, with visuals and, printed information. I printed a map of what I was going to have, and I was going to have you enter in, and then you start with some background information about the period, and then you go to stuff about ships, and then you go to another area which was a pirate's life, and that would have stuff that they had and, weapons they used and stuff like that. And then I noticed that they had big costume size cabinets, so I thought, well, we'll put some costumes in those.
Sure.
And in the middle area, we'll have an area for some information about historical pirates. And then along the final edge of it, we'll have the mythical pirates, because I believe that, if you're into pirates, awesome. Lots of people approach it from a lot of different angles. I believe that all of those angles are valid.
Sure, yeah.
So I think you're a historical reenactor and you want it razor sharp, historically accurate. Awesome. God bless you. You're awesome. Great. You want to look like a pirate that's been in the movies for years? Beautiful. That's awesome. You do that. You just love the fantasy of it all, and that's the stuff. Like you want your kids to play with little wooden swords, and you have pretend pirates on the wall so that they can feel adventurous. Even better. That's beautiful. Sure. So I thought the exhibit should sort of have all of that.
Yeah. And
so I pitched it with those ideas, and I had found a book of copyright free and what is it? If not copyright, it's
like public domain stuff.
Yeah, it's public domain stuff. Old images that you could print out and use and didn't have to get anybody's permission. And it's all of the classic images that you've seen, color images, drawings. There's just a ton of them. And there's, even some of our favorite paintings are old enough that you don't have to get permission to print up a digital version of it.
Sure.
And show somebody. So I put those into there, and I mentioned to in the pitch, I was also intending I'd find some historical actual period artifacts. So I'd find some coins, and if we got enough sort of steam going, I thought I could probably reach out to other museums and borrow something. I didn't know if I could or couldn't, but I figured I could. So I'd have the images, I'd have reenactor items, I'd have costumes, and I'd have these graphics, and then I'd have a lot of information on little placards. And then I thought, well, I'll also put together, because I thought, okay, like myself, what the hell does Elvis have to do with Petaluma? Right. There will be people that will say, what the hell do pirates have to do with Petaluma?
Right, yeah.
So I'll create a faux history of the lost pirates of Petaluma.
Nice.
Pirates that were being chased by the Spanish, came up into the bay, took the slough to hide, and landed here, and were the early settlers of Petaluma. And I went as far as to suggest, so what I did was I did sort of footage from a show that never aired.
Okay. I
had a buddy of mine Brian Thomas. I had Brian Thomas, a comic that we both worked with.
Yeah.
I had him be the host because he sort of looks hostish. And he would talk about like that there had been rumors about this for years, but that it was sort of a hidden thing that people didn't acknowledge.
Okay.
I'd even suggested there's an antique store downtown that used to be a bank. And the basement of it, if you've ever been in the basement, it feels like it goes further deeper than the building is.
Okay.
It doesn't, but it feels like that. So I suggested that buildings all over town had dugout basements because they were looking for pirate coins.
Okay.
And that because there were rumors that there were underground tunnels in Petaluma. In fact, I asked some kids, and they go, "Oh yeah, there's tunnels all over." There's none. There
Yeah.
isn't. But that bit of maybe there is, maybe there isn't, allowed for me to suggest in this that they were there because people were digging, looking for gold.
Oh, interesting.
And so what I had suggested was that on an archaeological dig, while looking for information about I think it was the Miwoks or whoever was here, somebody had found a coin. And that started this frenzy. And then they found a journal, the captain's journal. And the basic story was that the pirates had landed here. It didn't go well, and they left. And so that was the video that greeted people when they came in. And that's what I suggested to the guy. So I bring this whole package. I brought up printed pages and this suggestion of this video with my background in film, and told him that I, had connections to the pirate community, that I could get these things. And the guy, Joe Noriel, who was the president at the time, was floored. He said, "Oh my God." He goes, 2 days ago, I was talking with one of the other board of directors about we should get a pirate exhibit.
Oh, wow.
And they had looked for rentals, and the cheapest they could find was $20,000.
Oof.
And I told him, "I'll tell you what, I'll do it for nothing. You guys got to pay for the printing."
Sure. There you go.
Now, had I known now, when I pitched it then, I may not have been so accommodating.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But he said, "Well, let me mention it to the board of directors." And so they loved the idea. I included the idea that we'd have a number of activities for kids. And so they set dates. It was going to happen from September of 2011 till the end of November. I think it was going to be 8 weeks.
Okay.
And so then I started reaching out to the people in the pirate community for some of these items.
Sure, yeah.
And I'll just give you a rundown of some of the folks. So the McKays were gung-ho.
I'm sure, yeah.
They had costume pieces and weapons and onion bottles and, recreation artifacts that they had made. So in terms of Pirates Life, I had a lot of that covered. Through them, I met Kelly Farah, who's a prop guy, had worked on all the pirate movies. So he contributed gold from the treasure of Pirates of the Caribbean. He contributed a copy of one of the scripts. He's also an accomplished painter. And so there was a great image of pirate accoutrements of a still life that he had done.
Oh, nice.
So that hung in the area. Another friend of mine, Paul Seeley, I had seen him do a miniature version of the redheaded painting on the Pirate Ride.
Sure, yeah,
The title of that is Portrait of Things to Come. It's a Mark Davis image. And so I knew he could recreate it. And so I reached out to him saying, could you do this? And he said, yes. So I'm like, awesome. I reached out to Tony Swatton. He's a blacksmith that has made weapons for like Batman and pirates and Hook.
Nice.
What I was hoping to get a hold of was he has a copy of the Hook.
Oh, from the movie, yeah.
Yeah. Now he wasn't willing to part with that, and he wasn't willing to make a new one for me, which he does for a price. But he also had made Jack Sparrow's sword.
Oh, wow.
And so he had one of the recreation items. So I had a replica of Jack Sparrow's sword made by the guy who made the real one. Which is good enough for most.
Sure, yeah.
People would see it and go, hey, the guy that made that. Yeah, right. Exactly. Bilge Monkey.
Yep.
I had reached out to Gerard, and he had there's a really cool statue of Blackbeard. Stands about maybe 18 inches tall. Got his foot up on a cannon. It's got real cloth for the clothing. I mean, the thing is awesome. And I had read on he had a review of it and mentioned that he owned it. And I said, could you lend us that? Because that'd be great
Sure.
So we had that. Bannerson Little, I had read his books or skimmed some and read others. And I reached out and asked if I could use pull quotes from his book and credit him.
Oh, okay.
And so I had a number of those up. So I would use passages from that because I certainly know more than many. about this pirate stuff now.
Yeah.
But I'm no expert, so I wanted to have some expert. When you go to a museum, you expect some expert.
Yeah, and he's pretty much
he's the man.
He's as experty as you can get.
Exactly. So I thought that adds some gravitas.
Yeah.
There was a gentleman in the area. So there used to be a hobby shop, and on Saturdays, maybe intermittent Saturdays, they would have wood building. They would do not pirate ships, but they'd do wood shipbuilding.
Uh-huh.
And as models, huge, the huge recreation, fully scale, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Really ornate ones. And so I had gone to them and given a pitch saying I'd love to have any of these ships here. Now nobody bit because those guys, they just saw their ship going out of their control.
Yeah.
And which they were going to be it's a museum. People have all sorts of things in museums that don't get touched.
Right,
you know.
Yeah.
But they weren't into it. But the one guy reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've got coins from the period."
Oh, wow.
And I thought, there you go. Look, actual piratey money.
Yeah.
Pieces of 8. And he had a whole little board with years of what they were. So people are coming in going, wow, that's an actual coin from the 1500s or the 1600s or the 17. He had the whole progression.
Nice.
A couple of community members, somebody had a flintlock from 1800, and I thought, well, we'll put it in there.
Yeah.
We'll mention that this is a lot like a period piece.
Yeah.
Mark Stevens, who's a recreation guy, he used to be a Navy guy, and he teaches history at a couple of, maybe one college in the East Bay, maybe a couple of them. He had a lot of great nautical items because at the pirate fair, he would teach kids about nautical, actual pirate nautical history.
Yeah.
So he had a watch, like a watch board, and he had the sounding board that they would put it in to figure out how fast they're going. And
sure.
So I had all these items in a cabinet with the explanations of what they were. He also had made for the Pirate Festival and for his own sort of fun. He had I think it's pronounced gibbet.
Okay. Yeah.
But it might be gibbet. It's the cages that you would hang pirates in.
I've never known how to pronounce that either, but
we'll go with gibbet. Let's say gibbet.
Gibbet.
Who's gonna correct this? It's a podcast. They're not calling in.
I'll get emails.
By the time they call in, we're long gone, brother. Not you. You're still there. But anyway, so he had a cage like that he had made, and he had a skeleton. So we put some ragged outfit stuff on it, and it was hanging up in there.
Nice.
So when you walk in, so the guy that the museum had working for them, Bill Chase, he built a lot of the walls and stuff for various exhibits. So now I'm coming to him going, hey, can we build a mast? And he was into it, man, because he had a theater background and a film background, and he was like, let's do this. And so we when you come in, there was a mast in the middle behind this wall. The first thing that hit you was I had sort of an opening image that had included a full-size pen and ink drawing of a pirate leaning up against a real barrel. So it sort of suggested, look, some of the stuff you're going to hear is graphic, some of it's real, some of it's 3D. You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
It's sort of encapsulated. And then I had the title, which was Pirates, Legends, and Lore. And I had done that in little cutout letters that were over that. And so when you looked up to see those, then you saw the mast, and then you saw a crow's nest and a flag flying above it.
Nice.
And, because they had this huge open ceiling, so you could look up, and it was way up there. And so then when you came around, you passed the historical stuff. This area doesn't have a lot of ties to pirates. We can tie to Francis Drake, maybe.
Right, yeah, maybe.
Which the guy who lent us the coins, oh my God. So I can say this because he's not going to listen to this. A, because he's probably hard of hearing, and B, because there's no way he can work a computer.
Okay.
But anyway, lovely man. But he said, if you tell people that Drake was a pirate, I will take my stuff out of this exhibit. Which I just floated this with him. I said, well, to the Spanish, he was.
Yeah. That's pretty hardcore.
But I let that go.
Yeah.
And then said, well, sir, we will make sure that people know he was a privateer.
Yes, there you go.
which he was happy about.
That's funny.
But so as you pass the coins and a few other, there was a cannonball
Okay.
from who knows when, but it
Yeah.
looked like a cannonball. And then you pass flags, and so we talked about the flag history, and both real and imagined. And then we get to the nautical. Then you pass the pirate gibbet or gibbet. You passed a couple of costumes, and then you're back in the little area where the pirate's life was.
Okay.
And I had music playing. I had shanties and sound effects playing so that you could hear men on ships. And in that area, so in the first area, a kid could make a flag, and then they go around, and in the pirate's life area, they could learn to tie knots.
Nice.
There was a knot wall. And then after the knot wall, you pass 2 more costumes, and then you get the case where the pirate treasure was.
Okay.
Next to it, we had a case of bottles that the kids could smell the bottles. And my point there was to suggest that pirate's treasure was a lot of things. And so one of the bottles was vanilla. One of the bottles was some other spice. And there was spices to suggest, hey, look, sometimes it was spices. Sometimes it was slaves. Sometimes it was, there was lots of treasure that they would get and sell.
Right. Yeah.
And then in the middle of the room was the historical pieces, which had sort of real images or images from the period, which of course we now know are not necessarily as real as they needed to be.
Yeah.
But it talked about the real pirates. There were 3 standing cases in the middle, tall ones that you could walk all the way around. One that had the black beard and a couple of weapons. One that had one of McKay's. He has a great recreation of Davy Jones' hat.
Oh, nice.
So that was in there, and then on the shelf below it was when McKay first started, he was a pirate. He was a Sparrow impersonator.
Yeah.
So we had his wig and hat and a couple other items. So as they pass that area, then they get to the fantasy area. I had on one of the walls, behind one of the walls, was Treasure Island was playing. And so I had information about that. Then on that wall, I also had that pirate painting by Paul Seeley, the one that looked like the Mark Davis one.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Which was fun because in my pirate exhibit, I got to have boobies. So even though it's for kids,
it's not a pirate exhibit.
If Disney can, I can.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And then there was a case next to an image from Treasure Island. This area, there's a Robert Louis Stevenson Museum.
I didn't know that.
In Napa, near Napa, north of
kidding.
Napa.
Well, I have to go find it.
Google it. Anyway, they have a bunch of stuff about him, but I picked up a first edition. They lent us a first edition of Treasure Island.
Okay. Wow. Neat.
So that was lit up very nicely and looked awesome.
Sure.
And then below it was on the bottom shelf, there was a script from Pirates. So I was sort of addressing the fantasy part. And then the last thing you saw behind a couple of posts that look like from a pier, there's ropes keeping you away from it. My father-in-law, we had asked him, he's a Finnish carpenter as well as an artist. We had asked him to build a pirate ship wagon.
Ooh, neat.
And I think if you go on my page, the pirate page on Facebook, I'm pretty sure there's images from the museum, including that ship. I had done the finished work, but he had made this basic shape that looked awesome.
Yeah.
And
I'll link
it was to sort of
page.
suggest the pirate in the kid in all of us.
Yeah, neat.
And the exhibit had, they also had kids could come and they'd pick up a you find the item type page. And once they find all the items, their page got stamped with a skull and crossbones, and they were handed a fake pirate coin.
Nice.
So they could have their own pirate coin.
Yeah.
It was one of the most popular exhibits the museum had ever had.
I'm sure, yeah. Sounds great.
Had gotten thousands of people. They extended it through into late December.
Nice.
So I revamped some of the graphics works to include, I'd used the skull and cross swords, the Jack Rackham-ish, as part of the logo. And so when we were extended into Christmas, I added a Santa hat to it. So that we could publish, because it got a lot of free press because people were excited about it.
Oh, yeah.
Let me make sure I didn't leave anybody out. Bennerson, Mark Stevens, Kelly Farah. Yeah, those were the guys. It certainly wasn't without its controversy. We had a fair number of old school Petalumans who hated the Elvis exhibit, and God knows they hated the pirate exhibit.
Okay,
so
why?
they took to the interweb.
What was their reasoning?
And started posting about, this isn't Petaluma history.
Oh.
And a couple of them I took issue with, mostly because I like a good argument. But I basically said, look, nobody goes. The history's still upstairs, so you got to get people in the door. That was sort of the whole thrust Joe Noriel had for the museum, was we got to have exhibits that bring people in, or they'll never see the history stuff.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so he had done all sorts of fun stuff, NASA and interesting artists and all sorts of different things to try to get people excited about the museum, so that then they would see some of the butter and eggs upstairs.
Right.
And so it was fun. It was fun to do. My son still calls that museum the Pirate Museum.
Nice.
And he was little enough that the wagon was big on him. He was probably, it was 2011, and so he's 6 now.
Okay.
People still go to the museum and they say, hey, when are you guys going to have the pirate exhibit back? Now, as a partial hoarder myself, some of that stuff is still in my garage.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. You can't get rid of
but
those
McKay's
things.
got their stuff. Everybody got their stuff back, so it'd be hard to get the gang back together again.
Yeah, I was going to say it would be tough to, take that as a touring collection when you have already distributed it all back to the owners.
Yeah, although the flip side is a lot of those items could be purchased.
Yeah.
Knowing that some of these exhibits rent for $20,000.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So you could probably put together a substantive exhibit with a few loaner artifacts. You can buy, for probably $50, you can buy an onion bottle from the 1700s.
Sure. Yeah.
And you put a couple of those in an exhibit. It doesn't mean that pirates drank from it, but they could have.
Right.
But there, and you probably can lay hands on a first edition Treasure Island that isn't from the museum.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of ways that one could probably go about this, but for me, it was an opportunity to just see if I could do it.
Sure. Yeah.
B, to get to play pirate stuff. I had the keys to the museum, so I would be in there at the wee hours of the morning. I'd have a table set up in the middle of the room, and I'd be looking at pirate books, trying to figure what else could I squeeze into this? What information could I squeeze in? What quotes can I squeeze in?
Did you mess with the eggs and butter? Did you move it all around to different places?
No. Look, I think a town's history is awesome, and again, I do think that most towns pay little mind to it, not because they disrespect it, but just because once you've seen a recreation of a chicken cage,
right? Yeah,
you're done.
Yeah, well, you guys have one definitely over on us here in Milpitas, where our city history museum is literally a long window in the mall.
There are towns.
Sad.
I was trying to think. So I lived in Eugene, Oregon for a while, and I know their airport has some of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As you walk through the Eugene airport, there are some little window kiosk things that talk about the history.
Yep. Yeah.
But I was trying to remember if there's I think there is an actual history building. May have never gone to it.
Yeah, that's like ours, except it's next to a Chipotle. So,
which in its own right has its own touch of history.
Well, this has been great, Nick. What's the name of the Facebook page? Because I'm going to link that up in the show notes.
I probably should answer this better, and maybe when you re-edit this, you'll do that. But I think it might be Pirates, Legends, and Lore.
Okay, I'll look it up and make sure.
You know what? While we're talking, I can't. Doesn't have it. Yeah, I think I put it as that, and here's what's been fun about that page. So I had put it together at the time of the exhibit to both get people interested, to be able to tell people that we're going to loan stuff to go look at it and see what I have in mind. Then I also, and if that's not totally accurate, it may have been as a post thing to sort of homage. But either way, now obviously without the exhibit there, it's a place where I sort of do clearinghouse stuff for pirate stuff.
Yeah.
So Black Sails has been a frequent post that gets popular. And how great has that show been?
Oh, love it. It's awesome. Yeah,
man. So I've put a lot of that stuff there, and I think the page has almost 1,000, maybe 900 something followers.
All right, cool. Well, we'll
that
get
fluctuate.
In the show notes. Good. And then, what site would you like people to experience your comedy stuff?
You can go to I think it's Nick Hoffman, either Nick Hoffman Entertainment or Nick Hoffman Comedy.
Okay.
And what's weird about that page, and maybe you probably don't have this experience. You probably have a huge following. I am hovering right around 211 followers.
All right. Well, I do have you beat on that one.
Well, here's what happens. I have several new views every time I post something about a show on some other area, or somebody else posts something about a show. And it says you have 13 new views, but then no likes.
Yeah.
So people come, they look, they see, they walk on by. So I'm happy that when
Facebook
I do comedy
shopping
myself, that it seems that people enjoy what I'm doing. I need to find a way to infuse more of that apparently into my page.
There you go.
But I'm happy that the pirate page, I guess from a piratey standpoint, the one thing that I love staying connected to this pirate thing. Because, as I mentioned, as a metaphor, it works for me, but also, it reminds me to sort of question things and stay a bit of a rebel about most things. Which I think is a way more interesting and fun way to handle things than just go, I've got to be at work 9 to 5.
Right. Yeah.
None of that's etched in stone. You don't have to do that. And so
that's right.
Remembering, and it gives you an excuse to become an alcoholic. I haven't achieved that yet. It's not necessarily a goal.
It's on the bucket list.
But I've got a lot of rum. and I taste it with some frequency.
There you go. Well, Nick, buddy, this has been super fun. I'm glad we finally got a chance to do this.
I hope this is fun for your listeners.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure it will be. So we are good, man. I will see you at the next gig.
Thank you, Phil. Take care.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And there you go, friends. That is my interview with Nick Hoffman. That was fun. It's always good talking comics. It's why I'm a comic. It's part of why I'm a comic is because I get to talk to other comics. And Nick's a funny guy, so if you see him around your town, make sure to go see him. You can find Nick on Facebook. His pirate page is Pirates, Legends, and Lore. So if you just pop that in the little Facebook search box, that'll come up. And if you pop in Nick Hoffman Entertainment, you are going to find his comedy stuff, and I suggest you do that. And all those links will be on the show notes under thecrossbones.com/040. My friends, there are pirates out there. There are modern pirates out there, and I'm not talking about the Somali guys. The problem with the modern pirates is that they don't dress well. They don't have nice hats. They do not have pantaloons. They probably wear sweatpants and eat Cheetos, and because of that, they sit in a basement with a laptop and they steal your identity. Those are the pirates I'm talking about, friends, and you do not want those pirates to get your stuff. Trust me, it's a pain in the butt. It's happened to me multiple times, and it's a drag. And the way that you keep that from happening is you get yourself a membership with LifeLock. It's very easy. It's very cheap. It's like less than $10 a month, and LifeLock goes out and they make sure that your information isn't out there in the dark, ugly parts of the web. They go look for it, and if it is there, they will help you fix it, which is the good part. That's the part that you don't get from your free credit monitoring through your credit card and things like that, because I have that too, and that's cool, but they don't really help you that much if something happens. LifeLock will help get you out of the mess, and you can get 10% off a membership right now. All you have to do is go to lifelock.com. Nope. Sorry, let's try that again. You can go there, but if you go to underthecrossbones.com/lifelock and click the start your membership button, you will get 10% off. You can just go to lifelock.com too. That's how it works. But if you use my link, then I make a little credit for it because they're advertising, right? That's how it works. I also have a free ebook for you. It's a great one. It is The Pirates of Panama or The Buccaneers of America by Alexander Exquemelin. And it comes under both varieties of title. Whichever one you prefer is fine. And I've got it for you for free. If you've not read it before, it is a seminal piece of pirate writing from the Golden Age. And it is fantastic. It's really great reading, and it's of the time, which is, so it's not, well, it's probably secondhand information still, but even, it's not like 10th-hand information like we get a lot of the times now. So if you want this book for free, all you have to do, go to underthecrossbones.com, click on the free ebook button, and you will get a link to download it. It's just that easy. Or if you're out and about and all you got is your phone and you don't want to go typing around on websites, just text the word pirate and your email address to 94253. Text the word pirate and your email address to 94253. Super easy, and it'll kick you back a link to download that ebook. All right, you ready for some comedy, some music? I got some good stuff for you today. Our comedian today is Stu McAllister, who is a buddy of mine that I believe I've met at the World Series of Comedy in Las Vegas. Very funny guy. We're going to hear some comedy from Stu. And the music today is a song called Photo Album by Jacob Haller. And he gave me the whole album. And this isn't one of the songs he told me I should play, but I'm going to play it anyway because it's super funny. You're going to dig it, and I think everything I'm playing for you today is very suitable for the week after Mother's Day, so it's going to be real cool. All right, here we go. Comedy from Stu McAllister and the song Photo Album by Jacob Haller.
I wasn't always the cool human being that you see before you, everybody. I wasn't always this cool, right? Because when I was in high school, I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs, I didn't do any of that nonsense, right? So I had some friends of mine try to change it on me, so they baked me some pot brownies. You know what I'm talking about? Pot brownies? Yeah, right? So I had a whole tray of pot brownies in the kitchen and the counter, right? I didn't eat any of them, but my mom did. Yeah, mom was like, brownies, high as shit. Mom was pretty high. And that's a funny story right there, except later that night we had parent-teacher conferences, everybody. Yeah. Because I got in trouble that day in school. Everybody got in trouble, man. I was in biology class, right? Every once in a while I had to read out loud in class. My turn to read. One of the words I was supposed to read was organism. Yeah, I didn't say organism. I said orgasm because I was a 10th grader with sex on the brain, right? So teacher thinks I'm being a dick, right? Calls parent-teacher conference, right? Me and my mom going, remind you, mom, high as shit, right? Teacher's telling my mom the story. She leans and goes, he said what? High-five the teacher. We left and got Taco Bell. It was the greatest night of my life. It was the greatest night of my life, ever. It was the greatest night of my life. It's the greatest. So. I drive around all the time for comedy, which is nice. Every once in a while on the radio station, I get like a Christian rock radio station. You guys like Christian rock? Yeah. No, it's shit. Don't listen to it. It's not. It isn't good. Let's be honest. But I have a real specific reason why I don't like Christian rock. I think they use subliminal messages in their songs. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Because whenever I turn it on, I'm listening to it, I just think to myself, Jesus Christ. I'm like, wow, they got me to think about what they want me to think about. Those guys are good.
Hey, darling, won't you please put down that old Necronomicon? I've been thinking of back when you were a pretty child of 10. Here's a picture of you drawing pentagrams upon the lawn. It's amazing how you've grown since that day. And here you are on the night you sacrificed your first goat. It was bleating awful loud. You know you made me awful proud when you took your silver knife and you cut its little throat. It's amazing how you've grown since that day. And here's a picture from the day that you became old Satan's bride. There you are all dressed in black. Satan's nervous at the back. You were such a lovely couple, and your ma and me both cried. It's amazing how you've grown since that day. Honey, thanks for looking through this album with me today. All the memories within nicely bound in human skin. You were a handful, but I wouldn't have it any other way. No, I wouldn't have it any other way. No, I wouldn't have you any other way.
And that is our show for today, friends. It was a good long one. Thanks for hanging in there. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you're new to the show, go back and hit some of those old episodes. There's really great ones. I've got the top 5 listed on underthecrossbones.com if you want to start from there. You can find all the show notes for this show at underthecrossbones.com/040. If you want to find out more from my guests, you can go visit Nick Hoffman on Facebook. Either look for Pirates, Legends, and Lore if you like his piratey stuff, or if you want to see him do comedy, check out Nick Hoffman Entertainment, both of those on Facebook. If you want to find out more about Stu McAllister, go to StuMcAllister.com. And if you want to find out more from Jacob Howler and his song photo album and lots of other great ones, he is at jwgh.org, which is a good argument for there not being any great web domains left. jwgh.org. Make sure you check him out. All the links on the show notes at underthecrossbones.com/040. If you're digging the show, go leave us a nice 5-star iTunes review. That is super helpful, and I like reading them. Okay, kids, until next week, I'll see you then.